The HOA president humiliated me in front of everyone. Tenants don't use our pool. Her contemptuous gaze burned as the homeowners watched. What she didn't know was that I had just bought half the condominium complex, including her own penthouse. A story about appearances, prejudice, and the sweet revenge nobody saw coming. Get ready for a twist that will warm your heart. Hit the like button and comment, have you ever been judged by appearances? You're just a tenant. The pool is reserved for owners. Just like that, point blank, without even an excuse me or I'm sorry. The HOA president's words echoed through the lobby of the Solaris condominiums like a slap in the face. And you know the worst part? Everyone there stopped to watch the little show. 15 faces turned in my direction, some trying to hide it, others not so much. It was as if I'd been thrown into the center of a gladiator arena, only instead of swords, it was judgmental stares piercing me. I took a deep breath. At 58, I had faced much worse things than an arrogant HOA president acting like royalty. After decades of saving every penny, working 6 days a week at 2 jobs, I had finally achieved my dream. Living in a high-end condominium complex in Asheville, in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina. A place where, theoretically, people were supposed to be polite. What a joke, right? I looked down at my clothes. Sweatpants, a plain t-shirt, and comfortable sandals. No brand names, nothing flashy. My hair was pulled back in a quick bun. None of those sculpted hairstyles the grand dames of the condo displayed first thing in the morning, as if they were born with a built-in blow dryer and flat iron. Apparently, my cardinal sin was not looking rich enough. Thank you for the information, Madam President. That's what I managed to say, with a calmness I didn't know I possessed. I turned around and headed for the elevator, feeling the stares follow me. You know that feeling like someone's whispering about you? Multiply it by 10. What that woman had no idea about, and this is what makes this whole story deliciously ironic, is that I wasn't just a tenant. I was the new owner of 40% of the units in the complex, including the most prized 2-story penthouse in the building. 40%. Almost half of that damn place belonged to me, and no, I wasn't living in the penthouse. I had chosen an average apartment on the 4th floor, while I observed how people really behaved when they thought you weren't one of them. Why didn't I throw it in her face immediately? Well, 3 things have always defined me in life. Quiet, persistence, keen observation, and meticulous planning. You don't build a small real estate empire by being impulsive. Every move needs to be calculated, especially when you're a woman from humble beginnings in a market dominated by men in suits. When I got to my apartment, I went straight to the balcony. From there, I had a partial view of the pool, the very pool I had just been kicked out of. I grabbed my binoculars, which I used to watch hummingbirds, believe it or not, and watched the HOA president return to her little group of friends, all laughing as if they had witnessed the funniest thing in the world. One of them even raised her glass of sparkling wine in a toast. A toast to someone else's humiliation, I imagine. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Robert, my attorney for over 20 years. Martha, everything is settled with the final registrations. You are now officially the owner of 32 units at the Solaris condominiums, representing 40% of the total. Thank you, Robert, and remember, keep this confidential for now. As you wish, but may I ask why? Usually, new owners are eager to introduce themselves, especially when acquiring a significant number of units. I smiled to myself as I watched, the president gesturing animatedly by the pool. Let's just say I'm conducting a little social experiment. I hung up the phone and stood there, contemplating the Asheville mountains, the blue autumn sky, the clouds drifting lazily by. I had one of those moments you only understand after 50, when you realize you have exactly 2 options: either let injustices make you bitter, or turn every obstacle into fuel. My journey wasn't easy. The daughter of a housekeeper, I started. Working at 14. Back then, nobody thought much of Elena's daughter. I studied at night, saved every penny. At 25, I bought my first property, a tiny studio apartment that I renovated on weekends. Sold it for a profit, bought a bigger one, repeated the process. Instead of expensive clothes, I invested in bricks and mortar. While other women my age were getting married and having children, I was building my assets. And no, I don't regret it. Every choice has its price. When my mother got sick, I was able to give her the best doctors, a private room in the best-equipped hospital. She was 62 when she passed, but she passed with dignity, without pain. It was for her that I vowed never again to bow down to people like that HOA president. And now here I was, facing a choice. Should I use my financial power to teach that arrogant woman a lesson or maintain my usual discretion? Why not both? After all, the best revenge is the one that comes slowly, when the prey doesn't even realize it's already in the trap. Over the next 6 months, this story would unfold like a prime-time drama series, just without the annoying commercials. And you're invited to watch every chapter with me. In the first week after the pool incident, I decided to study the enemy. You know, get the lay of the land. Without making a fuss, I started observing the HOA president's routine. Her name was Beatrice, 62, widow of a business executive, from what I gathered in my discreet investigations. I soon realized that every Thursday, religiously at 3 p.m., Beatrice organized an exclusive gathering by the pool area. The event even had a name, Owner's Tea. I swear to you, I'm not making this up. It sounded like something out of a period film, but without the British charm and with plenty of venom. From my balcony, with my trusty binoculars, now serving a purpose different from hummingbird watching, I observed 3 consecutive meetings. The pattern was always the same: 6 or 7 women, all between 55 and 70, drinking sparkling wine at 3 p.m., imagine, eating snacks served by condo staff, and, the main course, tearing down other people's reputations. Did you see what the tenant in 302 was wearing in the elevator? Looked like she got it from a thrift store, I managed to overhear on one occasion, followed by shrill laughter. And that new young woman on the 8th floor? Divorced, you know. They say her husband left her for someone younger. Serves her. Right, if you ask me. Who told her to let herself go? It was like watching a documentary about hyenas in designer clothes. The most impressive part, they truly believed they were at the top of the social food chain. What a lovely illusion. On the 10th day after the incident, I had a surprise. Joe, the night doorman, knocked on my door at 10 p.m. He seemed nervous, looking side to side as if he were about to reveal the location of pirate treasure. "Mrs. Simmons, sorry to bother you at this hour, but I thought you should know." He lowered his voice even further, almost a whisper. "The president gathered all the staff yesterday, gave specific instructions to, how did she put it? Make life difficult for tenants so they give up on renewing their leases." "What do you mean, Joe?" "Intentional delays in responding to service calls. Zero priority for tenant complaints, that sort of thing. She only wants owners in the condo. Says it increases property values." I invited Joe in, poured him some coffee. He continued. "Mrs. Simmons, I've worked here for 12 years. Never seen anything like it. Most of the staff don't agree, but nobody wants to lose their job." I thanked him for the information and assured him it would stay between us. After he left, I grabbed my laptop. Time to advance the game a bit. I accessed the private condo residents' Facebook group. Yes, I was in the group, though I had never posted. That's when I discovered something even more sordid. My name was on an undesirables list shared by the president. An undesirables list, can you believe it? Was this 2023 or 1940? The list included 7 names, all tenants, all people who, for some reason, didn't fit the Solaris standard defined by Beatrice and her gossip club. Next to my name, there was a note. "Thinks she's an owner. Keep under observation." Ah, dear Beatrice, if only you knew how much your little note amused me. "Thinks she's an owner" was technically correct. I didn't think I was. What bothered me, however, was seeing the name of Mrs. Carmichael, a 78-year-old widow who lived alone, on the 2nd floor. The note next to her name read, "Too old, appearance unsuitable for the condo standard." That made my blood boil. Pure prejudice against a sweet old lady who barely left her home due to advanced arthritis. That night, I started outlining my plan. It wouldn't be revenge. I prefer to call it a perspective adjustment. The issue now wasn't just about me, but about all those people on the undesirables list. The following week, it was May, and Asheville was gearing up for its summer season. The Mountain City comes alive this time of year. Music in the squares, art exhibitions, the vibrant local food scene. A delight. While walking through the main shopping district, I accidentally bumped into a young woman I soon recognized. Patricia, the HOA president's daughter. I'd seen her a few times in the elevator, always looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. "Excuse me," she said, helping me pick up some bags I dropped. "Oh, it was my fault. I was distracted by the shop windows." Patricia smiled, a genuine smile, the kind that lights up the eyes. Nothing like her mother's artificial one. "You live at the Solaris, don't you? I think we've crossed paths a few times." "That's right, 4th floor. And you're the president's daughter, correct?" Upon mentioning her mother, I saw her smile fade slightly. "Yes, I'm Patricia. I teach history at the public high school." We chatted for a few minutes. I discovered that Patricia, at 32, was completely different from her mother. Kind, polite, visibly uncomfortable with the social status her mother cherished so much. She mentioned visiting the condo only on Sundays for family lunch, an obligation that seemed more like a burden. My mother always dreamed of living in that condo. For her, it's like a symbol that she made it. I prefer my small apartment downtown, near the school where I teach. We parted cordially. Patricia had no idea who I was or about the incident with her mother. That casual encounter, however, would be crucial for future developments, much more than either she or I could have imagined at that moment. With the arrival of June came the condominium's annual summer kickoff party. I put my name on the attendance list in advance, following all procedures. 2 days before the party, I received a notice slipped under my door. "Dear tenant of 402, we regret to inform you that your registration for the summer kickoff party cannot be accommodated as maximum capacity has already been reached. Priority was given to owners. Sincerely, the Solaris Condominiums Management." Maximum capacity. The community room held 200 people. The entire complex had 80 apartments, many occupied by families of 2 or 3. The math simply didn't add up. This was the first small twist in my story. Instead of complaining or making a scene, I decided to organize my own summer party. Not in my apartment, but in the event space I had acquired on the ground floor of the adjacent building, which for some reason no one in the condo had connected to me. The space was large, with mountain views, and I had bought it as an investment, planning to rent it out for events. It was the perfect time for its debut. In 3 days, I organized a charity summer bash. I invited all the condo employees and their families, residents from the Sunflower Meadows nursing home, which was 2 blocks away, and some neighbors from the surrounding area. The theme? Stronger Together, celebrating Asheville's diversity. Hired a small local band, decorated the space with summer motifs made by regional artisans, served typical party food prepared by a local women's catering group, and the special touch, each guest was asked to bring a non-perishable food item for donation to the nursing home. The party was an absolute success. The local newspaper sent a photographer, and the next day's edition featured "Anonymous Businesswoman promotes social integration at Charity Summer Bash." The photo showed seniors from the nursing home line dancing with the children of condo employees, everyone smiling. Of course, the news reached Beatrice's ears. The next morning, she knocked on my door. She was impeccably dressed at 8 a.m. as if she had just stepped out of a salon. "Good morning. I'd like to know if you have authorization to use the name the Solaris Condominiums in public events." I smiled calmly. "Good morning, Madam President. I didn't use the condo's name at any point. I simply mentioned that I work here, which is true." "Work? You said you work here?" "Yes, I'm an independent real estate agent. This is currently my place of work." It wasn't a lie, I just didn't mention that currently I was working on managing my own properties. Beatrice looked confused, as if she couldn't fit that information into her pre-established categories. In any case, any event involving condo employees requires prior authorization from management. I organized a private event outside of their working hours in a space that does not belong to the condominium. I don't see where your authorization would be necessary. Her face started turning red. I could almost see her blood pressure. "Serious? If you continue with this attitude, I will be forced to take this to the board. Feel free. In fact, I'd like to attend that board meeting. As a tenant, I have that right, don't I?" She left in a huff after muttering something about people who don't know their place. Little did she know I knew my place very well. I owned 40% of her place. The reprisal came quickly. 3 days later, Beatrice called an extraordinary meeting to change the condo bylaws, further restricting the use of common areas by tenants. The proposed new rules were absurd. Tenants could only use the gym during specific hours, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. when most are working, would need to book pool use 48 hours in advance, and couldn't host more than 2 guests per month. Here came the first medium twist in the story. On the day of the meeting, as Beatrice presented the new rules with her smug smile, the door to the room opened. A man in a suit entered, excused himself, and introduced himself. "Good evening, everyone. I'm Robert Miller, an attorney. I'm here representing an owner who prefers to remain anonymous for the time being." Confused looks turned towards him. Beatrice seemed particularly annoyed by the interruption. "Mr. Miller, this is a private meeting for homeowners. I'm aware, and I am here representing a homeowner, as I mentioned. My client has instructed me to inform you that the proposed changes to the bylaws violate state condominium statutes and potentially the Fair Housing Act regarding equal access to common elements for all residents." A murmur went through the room. Robert continued. "Furthermore, distinguishing between owners and tenants for the use of common areas constitutes discrimination and could be characterized as an abusive practice under consumer protection laws. My client requests that these proposals be reconsidered, or they will be forced to take appropriate legal action." The silence that followed was deafening. Owners glanced at each other, trying to guess who this mysterious client might be. Beatrice, visibly shaken, tried to maintain composure. "Well, we can reevaluate some of these suggestions. It was just a preliminary proposal for discussion." The meeting ended inconclusively, with a promise to revisit the topic later. The uncertainty about the anonymous owner sowed seeds of distrust within Beatrice's group, exactly as I had planned. 2 weeks later, Asheville was buzzing with its Fall Food Festival, a celebration of the region's culinary scene. I seized the opportunity for my next move. I organized an event for the senior residents of the condo in the same event space used for the summer party. This time, a cozy fondue night featuring authentic Swiss recipes. During the 7 years I lived in Geneva, working as a real estate consultant for Americans investing in Europe, I learned the secrets of local cuisine. My Gruyere fondue with white wine and kirsch was practically unbeatable. Modesty aside, the invitation was discreet. Seniors fondue night. Bring a friend and warm up with Alpine recipes, free event. I placed small personalized invitations under the doors of residents over 65, including several of Beatrice's allies. To my satisfaction, 12 of the 20 invitees attended, including 3 ladies who regularly frequented the owner's tea. Curiosity trumped loyalty to the president, apparently. During the event, while serving fondue and sharing stories about my time in Switzerland, omitting the financial details, of course, I won over the attendees. Mrs. Gable, one of Beatrice's most loyal followers, even commented, "My dear, you must teach Beatrice this recipe. She always brags about the fondue she learned in that French cooking class, but between us it's a mess." I chuckled inwardly. Beatrice had probably never tasted authentic fondue in her life, but boasted as if she'd learned from Swiss masters. Typical of someone who builds an entire personality based on appearances. In the 3rd month, when the mountain chill was settling in, the first major test arrived. The building's central heating system failed completely. It was late October. The outside temperature hovered around 40 degrees, and the apartments were freezing. Beatrice called an emergency meeting. "Unfortunately, the repairs will take about 2 weeks. The necessary part needs to come from Atlanta, and there's only one specialized company that can do the job." The older residents were visibly worried. 2 weeks without heat in the peak of the cold season could mean health problems. Here entered the second small twist. That same night, I made a few calls. My time in Switzerland hadn't just yielded fondue recipes, but also contacts in the HVAC industry. A former client who had become a friend had expanded his business to the US and had a branch right here in Asheville. In less than 48 hours, a specialized team was at the condo, not just replacing the broken part, but conducting a full system overhaul. I didn't put my name on it. I asked my friend to present the service as a promotional courtesy from his company, looking to establish itself in the local market. The residents were ecstatic. Beatrice, completely sidelined, tried to understand how this had happened behind her back. "But how did you get the part so quickly?" The other company said it wasn't available. The lead technician, whom I had briefed beforehand, replied naturally, "We have our own stock, ma'am, and we work 24/7 in emergencies, especially when seniors and children are involved." That simple comment, subtly critical of the delay Beatrice had accepted without question, planted the first seed of doubt about her effectiveness as president. During the rest of the month, I used my contacts to learn more about the condo's administration. At the annual Appalachian Craft Fair, I ran into Edward, a realtor who had sold me some of the apartments. In our conversation, he casually mentioned the former HOA president who had mysteriously resigned 6 months earlier. It was strange. Charles was doing a great job, the residents liked him. Suddenly he resigned citing personal reasons. Many people were suspicious, but Beatrice took over quickly and nobody questioned it much. That information raised a red flag. I got Charles's contact information and arranged to meet for coffee, introducing myself as a simple resident curious about the condo's history. Our conversation was revealing. Charles Evans, a 67-year-old retired banker, looked weary when he spoke of the Solaris. I took on the presidency intending to modernize management, make it more transparent. I created an online portal where all expenses were documented, every penny justified. Initially, everything went well, but then I started noticing inconsistencies in previous accounts. What kind of inconsistencies? He hesitated as if weighing whether to continue. Finally, inflated contracts with maintenance companies, services billed but never performed, emergency fees with no documented emergencies. When I started digging deeper, I received threats. Not physical, but insinuations that certain mistakes from my past could surface. And were there mistakes? Nothing serious. Years ago, I had issues with the IRS over incorrect filings, all legally resolved, but the mere mention of it. Well, my wife has heart problems. I didn't want to risk unnecessary stress. And was Beatrice involved in these threats? Never directly, but she led the movement to replace me when I announced my resignation. And curiously, she was the one who most vehemently opposed the transparency portal I had created. This information would be crucial for what happened next. In my 4th month there came Beatrice's boldest move. She announced a 35% increase in HOA fees, citing extraordinary maintenance and security costs. She presented no detailed report, just a generic spreadsheet with values rounded up. Second medium twist. At the meeting called to approve the increase, my lawyer appeared again, this time with a very specific proposal. My client requests an independent audit of the condominium's finances before any increase is approved. Furthermore, my client proposes to cover 40% of the audit costs, proportional to their ownership stake. The number did not go unnoticed. 40%, someone muttered. Who owns 40% of the units? The pressure from the homeowners was so intense that Beatrice had no choice but to accept the audit. Her face alternated between red with anger and pale with worry. While the audit was underway, I intensified my strategy of connecting with residents. 3 times a week, I organized small gatherings in the condo gardens. Nothing formal, just tea, coffee, and pastries from a local family bakery. These gatherings, which I informally dubbed Coffee and Conversation, attracted more and more participants. It was a space where residents talked about books, shared life stories, discussed local cultural events. No gossip, no showing off, just people genuinely connecting. Beatrice tried to sabotage the gatherings in various ways, scheduling noisy garden maintenance during the same hours, spreading rumors that they were political meetings prohibited by the bylaws, even suggesting I was recruiting allies for some suspicious scheme. Her attempts only made the gatherings more popular. Even some of her former allies began attending, initially out of curiosity, then out of genuine enjoyment of the conversations. 2 weeks later, the audit results came in. As I had suspected, several administrative irregularities were found. Nothing constituting explicit fraud, but enough to raise serious doubts about Beatrice's competence as president. Contracts signed without comparative bids, reserve funds used without formal authorization, incomplete documentation for services rendered. The report also mentioned the curious coincidence that 3 of the companies hired for maintenance services were owned by distant relatives of Beatrice, a fact she had never disclosed. Third small twist: when everyone expected me, through my lawyer, to publicly expose Beatrice, I surprised them all. Instead of demanding her immediate removal, I proposed a compromise. My client suggests a reorganization of the condominium administration with the creation of a transparency committee composed of 3 owners and 2 tenants, which will oversee all financial decisions. My client sees no need for more drastic measures at this time, provided the identified issues are corrected. This moderation surprised everyone, especially Beatrice, who obviously expected public humiliation. The fact that I didn't seek revenge, but rather a constructive solution, earned respect among the residents. "Whoever this anonymous owner is, they seem reasonable," I heard one of them comment as they left the meeting. In the 5th month, during Asheville's city anniversary celebrations, I casually met Michael Davis, an architect specializing in the region's historic preservation. Our conversation about the local architecture gave me an idea. The Solaris condominiums, despite its prime location and luxurious apartments, had a rather worn facade. The paint was peeling in several places, some balconies showed signs of water damage, and the original architectural details had been neglected over the years. Third medium twist: I proposed at a meeting, again through my lawyer, a facade restoration project respecting the original architectural aesthetics inspired by the area's historic grand homes. The difference? I offered to finance 40% of the project as an anonymous donor. Beatrice, of course, vehemently opposed it. She argued that the facade was perfectly adequate and that the money would be better spent renovating her fitness center. Yes, she actually said her fitness center, a Freudian slip that didn't go unnoticed. Through Michael, whom I hired as a consultant, I presented renderings of how the building would look after the restoration. The enthusiasm was immediate. Beatrice was outvoted by a large majority, suffering her first major public defeat as president. Later that month, I learned through Patricia, with whom I kept occasional contact, that she was facing difficulties with her educational project. As a history teacher, she had developed a program to take public school students to visit Asheville's historical sites, but lacked funding for transportation and materials. First major twist: I offered help through an educational foundation HOA, had established years earlier in honor of my mother. Patricia didn't know I was the founder and benefactor, believing it was just a local philanthropic entity. The project was a success, even receiving coverage from regional media. "Public school students discover Asheville's history," headlined the newspaper, with photos of smiling children visiting the Mountain History Museum. Beatrice, of course, found out through her daughter that her enemy had helped her own family. Her embarrassment was evident when we met in the elevator days later. She opened her mouth to say something, hesitated, and finally mumbled an almost inaudible, "Good morning." It was the first time she had spoken to me since the pool incident. The tension between mother and daughter grew. Patricia, thrilled with the project's success and grateful for the support, didn't understand her mother's sudden hostility towards the foundation. "It's like she'd rather the project fail than accept help from someone she doesn't approve of," she commented, confused, over coffee. Fourth medium twist: during the Fall Food Festival, I organized a charity event combining gastronomy and local history. I invited renowned chefs to recreate historic regional dishes, with proceeds going towards the restoration of an old public schoolhouse. The event gained prominence in the local media, with mentions of the mysterious benefactor who has been transforming the city's cultural and social scene. Beatrice, feeling her prestige threatened, tried to co-opt the idea. She announced that the condo would hold a similar event, only much more exclusive and elegant. The result was predictable: a pretentious party poorly attended and criticized for its lack of charitable purpose. Her lack of authenticity was noticed by everyone, and support for her visibly dwindled. In the 6th month, nature provided the perfect backdrop for the grand finale. A severe storm, typical of the mountain region, hit Asheville. Winds exceeding 50 mph and torrential rain caused damage throughout the city. The Solaris condominiums were not spared. Part of the roof was damaged, resulting in leaks in several apartments, especially on the upper floors. The most affected apartment? Beatrice's penthouse duplex. Second major twist. While the president panicked, trying to contact insurance companies and maintenance crews who refused to come out during the storm, I acted. I immediately deployed a restoration team specialized in historic buildings, with whom I had contacts through Michael. In less than 3 hours, even in heavy rain, technicians were on site, installing protective tarps, assessing damage, and beginning emergency repairs. Again, I didn't reveal my identity as the operations financier. I presented everything as part of the restoration company's emergency assistance program. It was at this moment that residents finally began openly speculating about my true identity. The pieces of the puzzle were fitting together. The charity events, the legal interventions via the lawyer, the facade restoration proposal, and now the rescue during the storm. Someone was investing time, money, and effort in the condominium, and it didn't seem to be for immediate commercial gain. A week after the storm, the condominium held its annual spring gala. It was an annual event to celebrate the end of winter and the arrival of the flowers that made Asheville famous. Even with the recent storm disruptions, Beatrice insisted on holding the celebration to lift the residents' spirits, according to her. I put my name on the attendance list, just as I had for the summer kickoff party. And, as expected, I received the same impersonal notice informing me that my registration had been declined due to maximum capacity. Nothing could have been more perfect for what I had planned. On the day of the party, the condo's community room was decorated with seasonal flowers. Beatrice, in her expensive floral dress and ostentatious jewelry, greeted guests at the door, like a queen in her castle. Soft music played, waiters circulated with glasses of sparkling wine. I arrived exactly at 8 p.m., the scheduled start time. I wore an elegant yet understated outfit, and for the first time since moving in, I wore some of the jewelry that had belonged to my mother, a set of pearls she had received as a gift from her employer decades ago, which she treasured. As I approached the entrance, Beatrice's smile quickly turned into a frown. "Good evening, Madam President. I'm here for the party. I'm sorry, but you're not on the list. I believe you received a notice about this." "Yes, I did, but I thought perhaps there was some mistake. After all, the room holds 200 people, and there don't seem to be even 50. Here." Her discomfort was visible. Some guests were already watching us, interested in how the situation would unfold. "There is no mistake. The party is primarily for owners, as has been explained to you before." Third major twist. At that exact moment, my lawyer Robert entered through the main door, accompanied by Michael, the architect, and Patricia, Beatrice's daughter, who looked confused by the situation. "Good evening, everyone," Robert said loudly, capturing the attention of those present. "I would finally like to introduce my client, Mrs. Martha Simmons." A buzz went through the room. Beatrice looked increasingly uncomfortable. "Mrs. Simmons is the owner of 32 units in this condominium, including the entire west wing of the 5th floor, the ground floor commercial space, and the east wing penthouse duplex." The silence that followed was profound. Beatrice, pale, leaned against the reception table. Is this some kind of joke?" "Not at all, Madam President. I have all the documentation right here." Robert opened his briefcase, pulling out a stack of documents. "Mrs. Simmons acquired these properties 6 months ago, choosing to maintain discretion about her investments, as is her right." Astonished looks turned towards me. I could see a mixture of surprise, confusion, and in some cases admiration. Beatrice tried to compose herself, nervously smoothing her dress. "Well, in that case, obviously there was a misunderstanding. You are more than welcome to the party, Mrs. Simmons." I smiled calmly. "Thank you, but I didn't come to attend the party." "You didn't?" "No. I came to call an extraordinary general meeting, as is my right as the owner of 40% of the units in this condominium. I would like to propose a complete overhaul of the administration." The shock in Beatrice's eyes was priceless. Patricia, in the background, seemed torn between surprise and a strange sense of satisfaction. In the days that followed, the news spread through the condo like wildfire. Owners sought me out, curious to meet the mysterious investor who had posed as a tenant. I received everything from invitations for tea to real estate business proposals. The extraordinary meeting was scheduled for the following week. Meanwhile, Beatrice seemed to have vanished. She wasn't seen in common areas, ignored calls, and had even cancelled her precious owner's tea. Patricia approached me 2 days before the meeting. She was visibly upset. "My mother isn't doing well." I've never seen her like this, so defeated. I invited her in, served her some tea. "I'm not here to destroy your mother, Patricia, just to correct a situation that was harming many people." "I know. Actually, each part of me always knew her behavior in the condo was problematic. I tried talking to her so many times, but she always said I didn't understand how things work in fancy places." Our conversation was long and revealing. I discovered that Beatrice came from a humble background, just like me. Her marriage to a successful businessman had been her social ascent, and ever since she lived in constant fear that someone would discover her origins, that she would be exposed as an imposter in that world of luxury. She created a character, Patricia explained, the elegant widow of the businessman, the competent HOA president, the grand dame of society. And the more she played that role, the more she lost touch with who she really was. That conversation changed my perspective. I saw in Beatrice a distorted reflection of what I might have become if I had allowed bitterness and insecurity to guide my steps after every closed door, every disdainful look because of my humble origins. On the day of the meeting, the tension was palpable. The room was packed. Virtually all owners attended, plus several tenants I had personally invited, much to the shock of some traditionalists. To everyone's surprise, Beatrice also attended. She was dressed more simply than usual, with less makeup, almost unrecognizable without her usual armor of luxury. When it was my turn to speak, everyone expected a devastating speech, a public humiliation of the president who had treated me with such contempt. Instead, I proposed something completely different. I would like to propose a shared and transparent administration with equal participation from owners and tenants. A cooperative model inspired by the community spirit often found in this region, working together, mutual respect, and valuing the community above the individual. I presented a detailed plan. A management council with representatives from all building sections, monthly accountability meetings open to everyone, an online system where every expense would be documented and justified. The Solaris condominiums doesn't need to be just a prestigious address. It can be an example of harmonious coexistence, where a person's worth isn't measured by the size of their assets, but by their contribution to the common good. The proposal was approved by acclamation. Even Beatrice's most loyal allies seemed relieved at the prospect of a more transparent and participatory administration. The outcome surprised everyone. Beatrice asked for the floor. "I would like to." She hesitated, visibly uncomfortable. "I would like to publicly apologize to Mrs. Simmons and to all the tenants who were treated disrespectfully during my tenure. I acknowledge my mistakes, and I would like to offer my experience to assist in the proposed administrative reorganization." The silence that followed reflected the collective shock. No one expected this gesture of humility from the proud president. "Your experience will be very welcome, Beatrice," I replied calmly. "I believe we all have something to contribute to making this place better." In the months that followed, the Solaris condominiums transformed, not just physically, with the facade restoration underway, but primarily in the atmosphere among the residents. The artificial divisions between owners and tenants gradually dissolved, replaced by a genuine community spirit. Beatrice, to the surprise of many, proved to be a valuable collaborator. Her detailed knowledge of condo administration, now channeled towards constructive and transparent ends, was crucial in the transition to the new model. Her daughter Patricia, proud of her mother's transformation, became a close friend. Together, we developed a project that brought students to learn about the historical and architectural aspects of our condominium, which, after all, was part of the city's cultural heritage. As for me, I finally started using the pool, and on a sunny Sunday afternoon, peacefully sunbathing, I saw Beatrice approaching with 2 glasses of sparkling wine. "I thought maybe you'd like some company," she said, handing me one of the glasses. I accepted with a smile. 6 months after being barred from the pool for being just a tenant, I had not only transformed the condominium's administration, but also the people involved, including myself. Because the real power was never in my 40% ownership. It was in the ability to turn conflict into opportunity, to choose construction over destruction, to see beyond appearances and touch the hearts behind the social facades. And if there's one lesson I've learned after 50, It's that revenge can be sweet, but genuine transformation is far more satisfying. In the end, it's not about defeating your enemies. It's about creating a world where artificial enmities dissolve in the face of real values. Beatrice raised her glass in a silent toast. And there, under the Asheville sun, two women who came from humble beginnings and followed such different paths celebrated not just a personal reconciliation, but the tearing down of invisible walls that had for so long divided people who, deep down, had much more in common than they ever admitted.